3, 2, 1. Good afternoon and welcome to the inaugural edition of the Gold, Goats, and Guns podcast. I'm Tom Luongo. It's Saturday, April 29th, 2017. So I've been doing this behind the scenes or behind a paywall for Newsmax Media for about 4 years now. And I'm going to do this on a probably twice weekly basis now. Hopefully twice weekly basis. We'll see. And for those of you who have followed me in the past, you'll note the format hasn't really changed, won't really have changed. It'll be pretty simple. I'm going to talk over some slides and then I'll show you some charts and then I'll let you go. So I'm going to try and do this in about 15, maybe 20 minutes and we'll go from there. All right. So let's get right to it. So the big news for me this week, aside from the fact that it's pretty obvious that we're not going to go to war over North Korea, is that this was the best week that Secretary of State Rex Tillerson has had as Secretary of State. We had a number of very good things occurred this week, and the first of which was the joint statement that he and Secretary of Defense James Mattis put out relative to North Korea by effectively stating two very important things. One, there's not going to be any military intervention there unless we are attacked, which is pretty much the exact policy that we've had with North Korea since the end of the Korean War. And the second thing that came out of that was that in that statement, there was no mention of China in any way, manner, shape, or form. That tells me that Tillerson and President Trump got the message loud and clear when told by both Premier Xi Jinping and his foreign minister and his assistant foreign minister that the way they've been behaving is unacceptable. And this is another classic example of what happens when you bluff and get called. I've had I write articles twice weekly over at halseynews.com on Mondays and Thursdays, and I also write over at Seeking Alpha as well, and I touch on all of these issues. Seeking Alpha, it's obviously market related, which is more of the focus of this podcast, and for Halsey News, it's mostly just political commentary, stripped of all market implications. And in both the articles I've written for Halsey relative to Tillerson, it's been about how Trump has tried to bluff first Putin over just how far they're willing to defend the Assad regime in Syria after the missile strike on the Al-Sharat airbase in Idlib. Trump's bluff got called there by Putin, and then it's obvious that his bluff over North Korea just got called by Jinping. So that's the situation. That's the first good thing that came out of the Tillerson State Department this week. The second good thing that came out of the Tillerson State Department this week was he took control of the UN Security Council meeting over North Korea, and not Nikki Haley, who's been acting like a Waffle House waitress. And I can't take credit for that one. Like I'm straight from Russia Insider. Who's running for, she's acting like a Waffle House waitress running for U.S. president in 2020, and she's already started her campaign. She's not acting like a U.S. ambassador in any way, manner, shape, or form. She's been campaigning and playing to the domestic audience back here in the States. And that's completely unprofessional. Tillerson finally called her out on it, sidelined her at the UN Security Council meeting, and issued a sternly worded email saying that pretty much she's not allowed to open her mouth unless he approves it going forward. And I think that that is also an excellent turn of events. What it's telling me is that T-Rex, for lack of a better term, T-Rex is getting control of the State Department, and that's a very, very good thing. There's a lot of swamp that needs to be drained there, and up to this point, it's been pretty touch and go as to whether or not he was either, one, on board with the idea of draining the swamp, and two, whether or not if he was on board with it, whether he'd be capable of actually affecting it. So the third good thing that came out of the Tillerson State Department this week was the changes to the staffing, right, and his proposed staffing cuts, which are to cut 9% of the State Department staff in accordance to Trump's executive order to cut the budget by, I can't remember what the percentage is. I think it's 37%. Well, part of those cuts are going to come in the form of 2,300 diplomats that are no longer going to have jobs either through attrition or direct buyouts. And no one should shed a tear over this. Not even those who believe that we should have a robust diplomatic corps. Understand that the diplomatic corps of the United States was expanded under the Obama administration. Mostly these people are political appointees being paid back for campaign contributions. So getting rid of them is truly draining the swamp. So from that perspective, it's great. If at the same time these cuts can offset some of the changes in Trump's tax plan, which include getting rid of things like the estate tax, all for the better. Because, look, I will trade 2,300 useless State Department junket jobs for a repeal of the estate tax any day of the week, twice on Sundays, and on every holiday, and pay double time on holiday. I'm serious. It has to go. The estate tax is one of the most vile, evil, and immoral things that exists. It's a straight plank out of the Communist Manifesto. It just needs to go. As a libertarian, I just find it absolutely reprehensible, and and the amount of money that it collects relative to the amount of money that it costs is insane, and it doesn't generate a lot of revenue. It clogs up the court system, and clogs up, and pays lawyers and accountants tremendous fees to set up trusts and everything else for people who are asset rich and cash poor. I mean, we're talking about people with, the estate tax has gutted the family farm in this country. All right, you have a piece of land that's worth more than $600,000 that you only farm and make 5% on every year, because farming is a low margin business. At the end of your life, you don't have a lot of money. So you may have $600,000 worth of assets, but you might not have $50,000 in cash. So there's not enough cash in the estate to cover the taxes for the land, so the land has to go up for sale. And this has been happening for generations. It's been happening for generations since FDR, and it's offensive and it needs to end. And tying that to Tillerson cutting the budget at the State Department, cutting staffing at the State Department. Look, when the point is that that's going to be replicated through a number of alphabet agencies around Washington, and it's all for the better. So don't in any way, manner, shape, or form feel sorry for these people. The knock-on effects and the knock-on economic effects of the estate tax are reprehensible, and it's a great thing that Trump is proposing to get rid of it. It's also probably going to be the first thing that he barters away, because Democrats love the estate tax because they're Marxists. All right. Next on the list, so we've covered numbers 1 and 4, bullet points numbers 1 and 4. Now we're going to talk about number 2, and then I've got charts for number 3. So number 2, Gazprom secures funding for Nordstream. Now, for those of you who don't know what the Nordstream pipeline is, the existing one is a natural gas pipeline that goes from the Russian Arctic to Germany. About 18 months ago, Russia proposed doubling Nordstream using the exact same route, thereby, neatly getting past any environmental permitting issues or anything else, because, look, the EU's already approved all of this stuff in the first place. With the original Nord Stream pipeline, there's no reason that they can't. There's no good argument for why they can't double the size of the pipeline using the exact same route. So it's very clever by Putin and CEO Alexei Miller to want to do that. And the reason that Nord Stream is important, and it's a political football here, is that the U.S. doesn't want Gazprom to have any more access to the European gas market. As a matter of fact, most of U.S. foreign policy is centered around blocking Gazprom from getting any more market share in Europe. We want that for ourselves, for companies like Cheniere, who just sold their first lot of liquefied natural gas to Poland, our attack dog in Eastern Europe at the European Union, and for the Saudis and the Qataris, who are desperate for access to the European gas market, and the Israelis as well. But the Israelis are going to get access to the European gas market either through the Russians or from us. They're going to win either way. It doesn't really matter. So the Nord Stream expansion has been a real political football, and it's been blocked at every turn that could be blocked. And about 6 months ago, Poland blocked the joint venture, refused to sign off on the joint venture that Gazprom had with 5 other oil companies in order to build the pipeline. It was going to be the Nordstream joint venture was going to then build the pipeline and be a subsidiary of these 6 companies. That got nixed by the Polish competition court, effectively the antitrust court, and that forced Gazprom to then declare that they would finance the pipeline themselves. Now, about 2 weeks ago, the EU announced that they have no legal basis to block the Nord Stream expansion project. This, of course, ticked the Poles off. It, of course, ticked the United States off about 2 weeks after that. And because of that decision, Gazprom and its partners were then able to announce a funding project, a funding scheme for the project, which is that of around $5 billion of the $11 billion that this project is going to cost is going to come from those 5 companies in the form of loans to Gazprom for 950 million euros apiece. It's a good deal. At the end of the day, they wind up being partners in the thing anyway. They just pull an immediate income stream as opposed to a delayed one. It's good for Royal Dutch Shell, who turned failing North Sea assets that they sold earlier in the year into long-term streaming assets. It's good for their balance sheet. It's good for their stockholders. They're now not worried about. They're less worried about them cutting the dividend, that kind of thing. So, interesting that this has happened. And the main reason why Russia wants the expansion of the Nord Stream pipeline is to get around Ukraine, because relations between Russia and between Moscow and Kiev are at an all-time low. They're going to only get worse from there because we're stoking that. Our State Department, under the Obama administration, created the coup on the Maidan, and in order to try and get the Russians to knuckle under and sue for peace over this. And the Russians just said, no, we'll just keep going around it. And the interesting part about this is that Germany wants the Nord Stream expansion. They want the gas. They want the ability to resell the gas within Europe and gain the gas transit fees. It's going to further deteriorate the Ukrainian economy. The Poles are going to wind up having to having to buy Russian gas anyway. They're just going to buy it from Germany as opposed to Ukraine. So it's all good. And at the end of the day, there's no way that Cheniere can compete, no matter how cheap liquefied natural gas is. They cannot compete with actual natural gas piped from Russia. There's no way. So at the end of the day, while the Poles may have bought their first cargo load of LNG from Cheniere, all they're really doing is virtue signaling that they'd rather buy expensive gas from the U.S. than buy cheap gas from Russia. Whatever. At the end of the day, if the Law and Justice Party that's in charge now, which is very Russophobic, continues along that path, they won't be in power very long. I detailed a lot of this stuff in articles that I wrote both for Halsey News earlier in the week and for Seeking Alpha. So, please go check those things out. You can find me under Tom Luongo at either of those sites. I'm not hard to find. Okay. And then the last thing to talk about is before I get to the charts, is the fact that gold closed April in a very strong position. And gold is going to be something that we cover in pretty much every one of these podcasts. So let's talk about gold real quick, and let's get some color on this situation. So what was bothering me in all month long was this high here at 1264. That we didn't get a close above that last month, that we had this hugely volatile month in March to close Q1, which is still bullish. This is still a beautiful uptrend, but there was the possibility of resistance forming here, and if we didn't get a move above this 1265, 1264, 1269 level, really 1270, then we would have a problem. And then if we did get that, if we weren't able to close above this area, then that would be indicative that this could be a short-term top. And, short-term from a monthly perspective, that we'd get, say, a 3 or 4 month correction down. But we did get a close this month above that 1264 level. The gold closed at around 1268, 1269, depending on the exchange yesterday afternoon. So that puts it in a very advantageous technical position for May. So for another run at 1300. So that's very, very good. And then we'll see if it can use that as a springboard to challenge the 1318, 1319 level, which was the high during Q4 of last year, which gold has to best from a technical perspective in order for all the time periods that matter to line up, that it would be in a bullish posture on the weekly, monthly, and quarterly charts. Right now, the quarterly chart is still bearish, and that's the problem. All right, going forward, let's look at silver real quick as well. See, now the problem here is that while gold is in a bullish perspective and a bullish posture on the monthly chart, silver's not. We have a 2-bar, this is what's considered a 2-bar reversal here. This is the low from 2 months ago, the last up bar in this trend, which itself was a 2-bar, which is a 1-bar reversal of this bar, right? This close here was higher than this high. This is a reversal signal. We got some follow through, but then 1850 was, the line in the sand that was defended by the bears. And so, we had some extreme volatility in March, but we closed relatively bullish towards the top of the bar. But then silver couldn't hold that level at all and closed weekly in April, weak enough that it closed below this level. So these two bars together, the close of these two bars is lower than this low, so that's technically a reversal signal. And that means that this downtrend is still in place and is still the dominant trend in silver. And because we now have a bifurcation between gold and silver, we have to be very careful that there's not something ugly on the horizon. And that's what I want you to understand. That's the takeaway from all of this, is that don't get too bullish on gold, even though it's acting well, because silver is not confirming that. And it looks like we have a top in oil, and it looks like we have a top in copper, I think copper, but mostly oil and silver are not confirming here. And natural gas actually looks pretty weak as well. So all of that is telling me that there's macro fundamental issues, which we're seeing, are pulling silver down. Silver's still acting like an industrial metal and not like a monetary metal. And for there to be a new precious metals bull market, you have to have both gold and silver trading like safe haven assets. And silver's not, but gold is. Okay, so that's the takeaway here. So for this week, coming into Monday's open, you want to look for a hold of the current levels in silver and a push back higher towards 18. Maybe next week see a move back above $18 in silver. That would be very strong. That would then mark this area here as a bottom and possibly negate the idea that we'd have a retest of 1575, which is the Q4 low, the December low. If not, if we get further weakness in silver, we're definitely going to see a retest of 1575, which that's going to drag gold down. And there's no way you'll see a tradable push above 1300 in gold. If not, I would actually be looking to fade that rally. So that's what I have for this week. That's for this edition. I will probably be back in a couple of days. We'll do this on a regular basis. I want you to, if you would, please, if you like this video, do me a favor and subscribe to the channel here on VidMe, and check out either my Twitter feed at TFL1728 or at Gab at the same username. Thank you very much. Have a great weekend and keep your stick on the ice.